Good morning. So good to see you all. Good to see a full auditorium. Thank you for being here. Welcome to our guests. I'm going to join with what Rich said at the beginning. I just appreciate you coming out and being here with us at Cornerstone today. And we hope that you will come back and be with us. If you're visiting out from out of the area, come back and be with us when you're through here again. If you're from the community, welcome. And we'd love to see you come our way again. This month we are going through a discussion on the truth. And Hunter began the month by studying out of John chapter 8 and verse 32, where we talked about how the truth will set you free. Last week I was in John chapter 14 for the majority of the lesson, where Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but by me." And we discussed that truth is not a piece of paper. It's a person. And with that today, we're going to continue building on that here in John chapter 17. And so, as we begin this morning, what I want you to do is take your mind back to the night before the cross. And I want you to picture in your mind Jesus. He is hours from arrest. In the minutes and hours leading up to this moment, he has knelt on the floor with a towel and washed the feet of 12 pairs of dirty feet of the apostles, including the pair of feet that Judas would use to walk out the door. He's broken bread. He has told his friends not to let their hearts be troubled. And then he begins to pray. And what we have in John chapter 17, I think, is one of the most important prayers, if not the most important prayer that's ever been prayed on the most important night that there has ever been. Now, I think as you look through John chapter 17, there is something that is very important that you don't miss. Because as Jesus goes through this prayer, in the middle of it, the prayer turns a corner and it turns toward you and me. Notice, if you will, verse 20. He says, "I pray not only for these." Who's the these? It's the disciples. He says, "I pray not only for these, but also for who? For those who believe in me through their word." Who is that? That is you and me and every person who has come after this moment, who has read and studied and heard the word of the apostles. That is who is in view here. And I don't think we need to brush over by looking at this, at what he says in just a general way. I want you to make what is said here in verse 20 personal. I want you to think about it in terms of you. And here is Jesus, hours before the cross. Think about it. If you had one prayer left and you were going to make it for the people who would believe on you today, 2,000 years later into the future, what would you ask God to give them? Notice in this text, he doesn't ask for our comfort. He doesn't pray for God to grant us success or our safety or even our happiness. If you go back to John chapter 17 and verse 17, he asks God to make us holy. Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. Do you see that there at the beginning of verse 17? Make them holy. Set them apart for yourself. And so that is the intention of the Son of God for each one of us sitting here in this room today. He had an intention that you and I be set apart for a mission. Now, notice the last part of verse 17. Your word is truth. Now, I can tell you that for most of my life, I have read this statement as something referring to biblical accuracy. that God's commands are reliable and correct, and that being holy means that I need to learn those things as accurately and best that I can and keep them the best that I can. For me, for most of my life, when I heard this passage, the word here in this part of the verse is the book, the Bible, the truth that what's in the book is right, and that holiness was the project of getting yourself lined up with what is in the book. Now, when you take that by itself, well, I could see where you could get that. It does sound like a statement about reliability. Your word is truth. And yes, God's word is reliable. We know that. The Bible affirms that in many, many places. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to consider the fact that verse 17 of John 17 is right in the middle of a prayer. And when we begin to take that into consideration, when we take everything else that is said around John 17:17, then the logic of our classical interpretation begins to fall apart. For example, look at verse 18, where he says, "As you sent me into the world, I have also sent them into the world." So notice how he is praying for our mission, our being sent out. And then he says in verse 19, I sanctify myself for them so that they also may be sanctified by the truth. Now stop there for a second. Notice what Jesus says. Jesus says here at the top of verse 19, I sanctify myself. Listen, brothers and sisters. Jesus is not making himself doctrinally accurate. He is setting himself apart to go to the cross. And note that it is his own self-giving that leads to his people being sanctified by the truth. And to try to make the truth in that sentence mean that the commands are reliable, the whole thing falls apart. And that only builds further as you continue going on. Again, we look at verse 20 where we were just a few moments ago. There is a word that goes out and makes believers. Let me suggest to you it is not a rule book that is sitting accurately on a shelf somewhere. Listen, the whole prayer here is climbing toward one goal. What is that goal? Verse 21, may they all be one. May they all be one, as you, Father, are in me, and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you sent me. Continue on. The prayer continues to build. Verse 23, I am in them, and you are in me, so that they may be made completely one. Why? So that the world may know that you have sent me and have loved them as you have loved me. Listen, the thing that Jesus is after here is not about tidy doctrine and doctrinal correctness. The thing that Jesus is after here is a people who love one another so visibly that the world will observe that and be attracted to the gospel. That's what he's after. These verses are pulling us toward a person and a mission. And so, here in John 17:17, there is something bigger and better, just hiding right here in plain sight. And I think it's a much higher view of the truth than we may have previously taken. Today, we're going to walk through John 17:17 very slowly and deliberately and look exactly at what the Bible says. Three things that we'll do this morning as we study together. We're going to talk about what it means to be made holy. Then we're going to talk about what kind of truth does the work of making us holy. And then we're going to talk about what the truth does when it reaches you. We're talking today about the truth that reaches the heart. Now, first what I want to do is talk about the word sanctify here in verse 17. And so we're going to go back to the first part of it. We're going to notice what Jesus asks the Father. He says, sanctify them by the truth. Now, that word sanctify, that's a church word, right? We just don't go around using that word in everyday vernacular. At least I don't. I might use it more than you because I'm a preacher, but still, the average conversation, we're not going to use that word. It's a church word. What does it mean? All right? Well, to sanctify means this. It means to make holy. It means to set apart or to concentrate, or consecrate. That's the word, consecrate. All right? Now, as we think about that, before we dive into a little bit more of what that means, I want you to observe who is doing the sanctifying. Well, again, Jesus is in the middle of a prayer. He is speaking to the Father. And so what you have here in verse 17 is he's speaking to the Father and he's saying, you, Father, sanctify them. So here it is the Father who is acting, and the disciples are the ones that it is happening to. They are not the subject of the verb, they are the object. They are the ones being sanctified. They don't sanctify themselves. They don't get holy through their performance. God is the one doing this to them. And so see this, understand it. Maybe you write this down. Holiness in this verse is something you receive before you ever do something. It's something you receive. And this is important because I think this runs against every grain within us as human beings. Because I think we want to look at holiness as something that we achieve, that we do ourselves. It's like a mountain we climb, or a score that we earn, or a record that we keep clean. And here is Jesus on the night before the cross, praying that holiness would be done to his people by his Father. The first move is the Father's, not ours. Now, what is this holiness that Jesus desires? Well, again, you might be accustomed to hearing the word holy and automatically thinking about moral perfection. Or maybe we define holiness as squeaky clean behavior, all right? Where we're living it right. Maybe you're thinking of a person that hardly ever messes up. They've just got this aura about them that they are on this level that maybe you're not. Now, that is not at the root of this word. Again, at its root, the word holy means set apart. Maybe you think of it this way. It is something that has been marked off from ordinary use. And it's something that belongs to God. All right? Think about it that way. Think about for a moment the temple. Let's go back into the Old Testament time and think about the temple and the vessels. Do you know the vessels in the temple were called holy? What does that mean? It's not because they had good character. It's not that the bowl had somehow read the Bible that morning and it made it holy. That's not what we're talking about. A temple vessel was holy because someone pulled it out of ordinary use and dedicated it and handed it over to God. And the idea here is that vessel had been claimed and it was owned by God now. And so, first of all, when you try to define holiness, understand that first and before anything else, it means to belong to God. You belong to God. Think about the song that we sang this morning. Did we hear the words of that song? We have been set apart by God. And so that is why we go back here in John 17 to the first part of this prayer. This is why Jesus prays the way that he does. Look at verse 11. He says, I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you. Notice here, Holy Father, protect them by your name that you've given me, so they may be one as we are one. And I want you to focus on that first part there, the part that's in yellow there. Holy Father. Why does Jesus refer to the Father as holy? Well, he's pointing out that God is in a category all to his own. He's set apart unlike anything else. And then what he's praying here, he is asking that his disciples be brought into that very same category where they are set apart from ordinary life. Common men pulled out of common use, now being stamped with the holiness of God. That's what Jesus is after. So you, think about it in this regard. You have been saved for a purpose. You have been called out of darkness into light for the purpose of living for God and engaging in a mission that He is calling you to. You have a purpose for life and for living. Now, let's talk about sanctification for just a moment. Again, big Bible word. So as we begin to understand this word in a little bit more detail now, think about it again. God is taking ordinary, common people and making them His own. God put His name on you. Think about that from just a personal standpoint. And the principle here is this. You belong to Him far long before you ever behave for Him. The belonging comes first. And the behaving comes out of the belonging. Listen, if you get that order wrong, if you get it backwards, where you say, I have to behave in order to belong, listen, you are going to spend your life utterly exhausted. You're going to try to earn something that was intended to be received as a gift. And I think it is so important that we get the order right, because getting it backwards is actually dangerous. And we all probably know people who are these careful rule keepers. And really what happens in a lot of cases is they are careful rule keepers, but they don't know the Lord at all. They can provide you with every correct answer and still have a cold heart. Listen, understand this. The keeping does not make you righteous, but it can make you self-righteous. Rule keeping without belonging doesn't produce holiness. It can produce a clean cup with nothing in it. So, keep that in mind as we talk about what it means to be sanctified. Now, what does the work? Let's go back to our text, John chapter 17. God does the sanctifying by what? Well, here it is. Sanctify them by the truth. So, truth is the instrument. Truth is the means. It is the medium. It is the thing that God uses to set a person apart. And so now everything that we're talking about depends on the answer to this. What kind of truth are we talking about? Maybe this is where we've sold the verse short in the past. We've treated truth here like a file or a folder of accurate information, a set of correct facts about God, and we study those things and we store it and we carry it around, and once we get the file complete enough, then we get it organized enough, then we're holy. Now, listen, that is not how truth works in John's gospel. John always presents truth as doing something. Let's go back to the verse we started with in the month of June, back a couple of weeks ago, John 8:32. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Think about what is being said there. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And so with this, it's an action. It's a force at work inside of a person. Notice verse 6 of John chapter 14. I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And so what we learn here is truth is something that you can be. Jesus says, I am truth. He doesn't say, hey, I am a filing cabinet full of information. He says, I'm truth. So truth in John is not something you possess. It is a reality that lays a hold of you. And I want you to see the difference for just a moment. I'm going to use an illustration maybe that will help you understand what I'm talking about. So I want you to imagine you have a flashlight with you. By the way, I am a flashlight collector. Whenever I go down to Sevierville and Gatlinburg, there's this place down there called Smoky Mountain Knife Works. Anybody heard of that? If you haven't, guys, you need to go. It's cool, all right? Schofield got me on this a few years ago. And now, every time in fact, I've been in that store 4 times this year, twice with my son, and every time I've bought something. Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that. Anyway, I did earlier in the year buy me a new flashlight. It's one of these, 3 million candle power flashlights. I mean, when you hold it and you turn it on, it immediately gets hot, but man, it'll light up a room. It is awesome. And I have that wherever I go just about. It's in my truck at all times. I love flashlights. And I like flashlights because they will point where you need to go. But I want you to think about a flashlight for a second. It's yours. You own it. You carry it. You aim it wherever you want it to go. You point it at what you need to see, and you point it away from things that you'd rather not. It goes where you want it to go. You're in complete, total charge of that flashlight. Now, liken that to a file. Because if we're not careful, what we can do with the truth is we can see things that we don't like and we can close it and put it in our pocket and forget about it. We can treat it as a fact that we control. Or we can treat truth as something we aim at other people while neglecting to see ourselves. We put it away when it's inconvenient. Now, that's a flashlight. How many of you are up early this morning? Anybody up early? Did you see first light? Today's the longest day of the year. And so as I was coming in this morning, it was just barely light. And I was thinking, wow, this is the first light of the longest day of the year. And the sunrise was beautiful this morning. I don't know if you got to see it. But you think about the dawn. The sun came up this morning, and it's nothing like my flashlight. Nothing. I can't turn the sunrise off and put it in my pocket. The sunrise happens whether I ask it to or not. It falls on my face, it warms my skin, and I start to feel it change. Look, how many of you have had trouble in your life and it's dark through the night and then you get to the morning and your whole demeanor changes? You know what I'm talking about? Sometimes that's what the dawn will do to you. And really, when you think about how the dawn happens and the light comes, it doesn't just light up the spot that you choose, it floods everything. It shows you things about yourself that maybe you'd prefer not to be seen. Maybe you would rather those things be left in the dark. And that's the kind of truth that Jesus is talking about. And so the idea here in the original language, when we see the word truth, is it carried the meaning of something that was uncovered, something that's no longer hidden. The reality has broken out into the open. It has been brought near on you. We don't manage that kind of truth. It exposes us, then it warms us, and then it sets us free. And I want you to think about the claim that Jesus makes right here in this part of the text. When Jesus is saying, your word is truth, hear that claim that he's making. Think of it on a mathematical term. A is B. And so he says, the word is truth. He's telling us what truth is by its very nature. And by the way, it's the same kind of construction that is used in John chapter 1 and verse 1, where Jesus says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word is God. A equals B. The Word is by nature God, and if you go back to our text here in John chapter 17, the Word is truth. The Word of God is truth. So John is telling us what the Word is by nature, and it is truth. Listen, truth is not something the Word contains. Truth is the very thing that the Word is made of. And now, tie that in with what we said last week. All right? John 1:14. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Who is that? It's Jesus. The one praying the prayer in John 17, and the one who said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. And I want you to see here in this text, when he calls the Father's word truth, he is naming it with the claim that he made for himself. The truth is not a file of accurate information. It is God's living self-expression. The Word of God made flesh. It's a person. It has a face. The truth that makes you holy is a person. And connect that again to John 17:19, where he says, I sanctify myself for them. He sanctifies himself. He sets himself apart. He gives himself over all the way to the cross so that you and I could be set apart too. That's what he's talking about. He is praying here. He is telling us, I am the truth that will make people holy. The instrument of your holiness is the crucified, risen Son. And that is why the high priestly prayer reads the way that it does. It is the cry of Jesus for the gospel to reach out to the ends of the earth and lay hold of people. The truth that sanctifies is the good news of who Jesus is and what he came to do. It's not a beam that we hold, it's the dawn that breaks over you. And so now let's talk about the truth, the heart that truth reaches. And we're first going to talk about love, because this is really important. We've established already this morning that God does the work. He does the work through the truth, and the truth is a person. That's Jesus. And notice what happens when Jesus reaches you. What is Jesus after? What does he actually do to a heart that he's laid hold of through the gospel? What does he do to it? Now, we've already established the fact that holiness is received and not something that we achieve. And so does this mean the things that we do don't matter? That holiness is just some kind of warm, fuzzy feeling that we have come over us, and it doesn't matter how you live then, you can just do as you please. Don't believe that for a second, because here's what Jesus says: if you love me, you will keep my commands. John 14:15. And by the way, skip down, if you will, to verse 23, because I think Jesus repeats it here for emphasis. If anyone loves me, he will keep my word. My Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him. So the essence here is we keep what God expects, we comply with his will. But again, what I want you to see here in these two verses is the order that he puts them in. Did you see it? Let's go back here. Love first, then obedience is what love does once love is already there. Listen, he does not say, keep my commands so that I love you. He never says that. What we see here, the principle that's built here is obedience is the glad response of a heart that already belongs to him. The cup is overflowing. It is pouring out because it has already been filled. And what I'm afraid is sometimes we get this wrong, and what we do is we make obedience the price of admission when Jesus says it's the evidence of belonging. The truth that reaches your heart, listen, the truth that reaches a heart doesn't hand you a bill. Think about what I just said. The truth that reaches your heart doesn't hand you a bill. What the truth that reaches your heart does is it captures your love, and then your obedience comes along behind it because it can't help itself. It just flows out of what's been done on your behalf. And then what happens when the truth lays hold of your heart? It produces a people that are held together. And again, I want you to see where the high priestly prayer climbs as we go through John 17. Again, here is verse 21. May they all be one, as you, Father, are in me, and I am in you. And again, verse 23, I am in them, and you are in me. Why? So that they may be made completely one. The whole point of being sanctified in the truth is a oneness that is so visible that the world looks at the church and finds the gospel to be believable. The truth reaches into people's hearts and it knits them together, and the watching world sees that. They see that love that exists in the body as evidence that the Father really did send the Son. That is what the truth is after. A family of believers that's held so firmly together by the love that all those out in the world, the neighbors and the friends and the associates, they are amazed by that and they want a taste of that too. And that is why John 17 was never intended to be one that we draw swords with. The prayer is, its goal is unity that wins the world, was never meant to be aimed at fellow believers. And so when the truth reaches your heart, realize it's freeing you and it's also binding you to fellow brothers and sisters. We have something here that holds us together, and it's by the power of Jesus and who He is. A people held together until the world believes. Notice there, may they be one in us so that the world may believe that you sent me. So, as we close this morning, thank you for being so patient this morning as we've worked through this lesson. How do we bring all this together? You know, the Holy Father, utterly set apart in His own realm, reaches into the kitchen of this world and claims a common band of people for His own. And the instrument that He uses to accomplish that is the truth. And that's not a flashlight you carry in your pocket. It's a dawn that breaks over you and warms you and frees you and shows you the road. And the truth turns out to have a face. It's the Son who sacrificed Himself all the way to the cross so that you could be made His. And when it grows, when it gets hold of your hearts, It's a love that knits you together with Him, and it knits you together with your brothers and sisters until the watching world believes. You know, a religion of effort keeps you clutching, just gripping, holding on to holiness. Gripping it like a flashlight, straining after your own goodness, aiming your righteousness at everyone around you while you yourself are exhausted. The life that Jesus promised is exactly the opposite of that. It has holiness laying a hold of you, and it has Him gripping you with the truth as hard as He can. And you know, you can do that first thing and grip and hold on and grit your teeth all you want while trying harder. Just stop. Stand in the dawn and let it rise on you. Listen, this is the invitation because Jesus wants to lay hold of your heart. He wants to allow His light to envelop you completely so He can take you home. Will you let Him in? Will you surrender your heart to Him and let Him do His work of transformation inside of you? He'll do it far better than you ever could have. Your job is to surrender and let Him do that work. Give up your burden carrying and let Him take it from here. And He says, "Come, you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." You need that rest? Give your burden up, surrender to Him, get your life right. If we can help you by being baptized into Christ this morning, all things are ready. Why don't you come forward as we stand and sing?